Hello and welcome to After the Bell Mirror Fighting's boxing show, coming to you the morning after Anthony Joshua's night before a ninth round stoppage of Kubrat Pulev. More importantly, hopefully now he is a couple of steps further along the road to undisputed. Please do give the video a thumbs up and subscribe to the channel. If you're listening, please do rate and review. I'm Martin Domin, joined again by George Groves, Declan Taylor. This time we're live. This time we really are giving you the first in-depth word on the previous night's fights. As I said, we will go back through Joshua Pulev. We'll look ahead, hopefully now, to Joshua Fury. We'll talk about Canelo and Smith next weekend, and then we'll touch briefly on the debate that has raged this last week. Well, it's not really raged, but it's certainly been brought up in the last few days. Boxing's really bad, and we should just ban it and forget about it. So, first things first, Anthony Joshua did what he had to do. He stopped Kubrat Pulev in the ninth round. He had him down in the third, twice in the ninth, and then it was all over. George, we sort of talked about before, would we see the Anthony Joshua of old where he was, knocking everyone out? Would we see Anthony Joshua from the Andy Ruiz rematch where he was a bit more controlled? I would suggest that we saw a bit of both. The third and the ninth rounds were very explosive. The rest of the time, he was quite controlled.
Yeah, no, he was. Obviously, he's maturing now as a fighter. He's had a lot of professional bouts now, so he's got a lot more experience, and that's showing now. It was cagey at the start, as you'd expect with two big guys. Lots of twitching and fainting. Pulev was very, very twitchy at the start. Obviously, he's got height and reach that he's giving away, so he doesn't want to give away any free shots. But it was good. I mean, it took took a round or so to get going, and then once Joshua lands, like many times before, the fight totally changes. He landed a big shot in the third, put Pulev over. There was a bit where he sort of turned away. I thought the fight was going to be over, Pulev, and no one really pulled it up. But it was bizarre where he turned away. I don't know if he'd lost his bearings of where he was in the ring or whatnot, but I think the referee scored it as sort of like the referee as the ropes keeping him up or something. But yeah, it was a very good performance from Joshua, like kind of what I expected. I think I predicted. I thought he would have gone a bit earlier. I thought he would have got rid of him within 4 rounds. But Pulev showed how tough he was. Great chin, super strong. Landed a couple of shots back himself, but was never really in the fight. Joshua's got rid of his mandatory, and now it's same debate when what's next, when we're going to see the belts owned by just one guy.
Declan, I don't know if it's just me or maybe it was just the occasion because of what is hopefully next year, but I can't really watch Joshua without feeling nervous, I always feel a little bit on edge. I'm never quite sure, even after that third round, I was never quite 100% sure he wasn't just going to take one. Obviously, we saw it against Andy Ruiz. You were there. How did you rate his performance?
Yeah, I thought it was a great performance. But you're right. There is a thing now after that first Ruiz fight where when he gets caught, you go, oh, is he gone? Is he gone? Is he gone? You never did that before. And boxing fans love that. That's what it's all about, isn't it? He got hit hard. I think it was the 7th round. Seemed to get hurt as well. Pulev landed a sort of Hail Mary right hand. That was always going to be his sort of honey punch. I thought it was a good performance, and you're right, it was a bit of both. I actually think it was a bit of a third edge. So rather than it just being either this boxer move or this aggressive guy, I feel like he's developed this third sort of type. And I don't know if it's as a result of his new or the developing relationship with his 2 additional coaches, but I've never really seen him use that sort of hand position before, particularly in the early rounds. There was a couple of times, like you say, where he just sort of reverted to type a little bit, but it's weird. It's like he's still learning on the job and still developing as a fighter, as a unified heavyweight champion, which is a bit strange. And it could be a little bit, who knows, it could be his downfall eventually, because it's almost like, it reminds me of if you've got a really good football team and you've got the Champions League final coming up, but the manager still doesn't know his best 11. And you're like, you still don't really know what Joshua's best at. But he got the job done. He was fit for purpose, clearly. A really good knockout. I mean, it was a little bit did we really need to see that last shot, which was an absolute icing for Pulev? But I thought overall it was a good performance, and that little vulnerability is what people want to see and what people tune in for. It just makes me a little bit nervous. Well, it does make me nervous, but you would be nervous if you're in the Joshua business when he's in against, or if and when he's in against Fury, or certainly someone like Wilder or someone like that. But overall, great fight. I thought it was a really absorbing sort of back and forth at times, actually, which I didn't expect. So we said last week that we thought it was going to be a quick job. I certainly did. I mean, he should have been stopped in the third round when he turned around. Let's be honest. That's should have been stopped there. I mean, it wouldn't have been a particularly fun stoppage for everyone involved, but that what should have happened. And then it's a 3-round one, but it went a little bit further. I don't know if he gassed a little bit after trying to get him out of there in the third, took the fourth off, and then it sort of just, there was a little bit of a lull, and then he got back on it. But overall, it was great. And I've got to say, there was only 1,000 fans in there, but I mean, whisper it. It felt like the old times. It felt like being back in the olden days where everything went. The only thing that was nice though, Martin, I've got to say, you'll know what I mean about this, but back in the olden days, journalists used to get properly crammed in. Like, we'd have a row of seats designed for 10 people and there'd be 16 of us in there. It's ridiculous. There, I had so much space. Felt like a king. It was amazing. But you still had the crowd and everything like that. Floyd Mayweather turned up. It was just a little glimpse of what life might be back to at some point in a boxing sense. So yeah, I certainly left buzzing. I'm sure a lot of the fans did, and it feels like boxing's back, and it kind of needed Joshua to help that along.
I bet you didn't have any power though.
No, absolutely zero power. But what I will say, I was warned by Matchroom's head of media, Dan Barnard, absolute top operator. But he rang all of us who were in the non-power zone and was like, "Charge your stuff up, boys, because there's not going to be anything there." And because there's barely anyone in the arena, the internet worked. Because again, Martin, you'll know this, but if anyone's never tried to get on the internet during a big fight like that, there's no chance there's too many people. When you've only got 1,000 there, happy days. It's like absolute quicksilver. So yeah, all happy, all good.
Happy days indeed. Josh, do you still see, I mean, Joshua, of course, well, he has had plenty of fights, but do you still see him as a work in progress? And should he still be a work in progress, given that, well, he's probably closer to the end of his career, obviously, than the start?
Yeah, well, no, I think in some ways every fighter should still be a work in progress. They still want to always be able to evolve, improve, make changes and adapt. But what you're not seeing is glaring periods where someone in the heavyweight division looks real novice-y, they're making what you feel is like novice-y mistakes. And sometimes Joshua, as well as many others in the heavyweight division, are susceptible to that. Obviously, they're big guys. They're not as mobile and agile as the smaller weights. They don't have as many fights. They hit harder, so the punches that they do land have a different effect. But yeah, I think now we're starting to see guys that remind you of the Klitschko's and Lennox Lewis. Even I'm trying to think of big heavyweights who knew how to operate within the ring, knew what their attributes were and knew how to nullify their opponents and get the job done. And I feel like you got Joshua and you've got Fury, and they're probably now at the forefront of the two biggest guys who can change and adapt as such. Like even Deontay Wilder, I'm a massive Wilder fan. I'm just a fan, but it turns out I'm just a fan of that big right hand because there's times where he can't set the shot up. He can't let the right hand go. He's waiting for the perfect shot. There's no real plan B. And sometimes he makes catastrophic errors, in the build-up to a fight. Like when he says his costume that he's wearing towards the ring weighs 4 stone and it's made his legs tight. It's like, come on. You're supposed to be an elite level athlete. You must know a bit more than what you're letting on. But yeah, I think it's an improved Joshua. Dex said he's got new coaches in the gym now, and so far so good. Sometimes there's a struggle with the hierarchy amongst coaches, and you bring in a new face and they want to show value. So they might want to take over. They might want to contradict the stuff you're doing already. But it seems like it's working for him. I think that was another improvement last night from Joshua. I thought that was a better version of him. After the Ruiz fight, the first one where he got stopped, there was that concern for me where it'd be like, right, there's so much at stake for, I'm Joshua. There's so much at stake for me, so much money. I'm getting a backlash from fans that I've never had before. I'm just going to go safety first now. And, then it's the Ruiz rematch where, it doesn't matter how I win. I just got to win, get it over the line. 12 rounds, safety first. Heavyweights, that's not ideal. It's okay if you're, sort of on your way up still. It's your first challenge. You're Tyson Fury going to Germany and you want to, sort of fart and fiddle and nick a decision against Klitschko, who's been a dominant champion for a decade. That's great, But even he has had to step up now, He had the first fight against Wilder, where he was a hero for getting off the floor and only getting a draw when people thought he should have won. The rematch, he has to go out dominating him and stop him. And he did that. And that's why he's come out with such popularity. And now where so many people believe him to be the number one in the heavyweight division. And that's kind of, I think Joshua has realised that, or the people around him have realised that. And great for the fans that Joshua's still happy to go in there, land big power shots, and get rid of the guys in front of him. I mean, Pulev, he's 39 years old. You can't, it doesn't matter. I know heavyweights live a bit longer, but the legs always give away the fighter's age. They're not as mobile. They look like the flexibility's got in them as such. And, they're not as agile through the ring. They might still have the power. They might still even have the chin. But that's what you're going to be up against when you're in there with a younger guy. He'd only been stopped once before, only been beat once before by Klitschko. So, it's a good record, Pulev, but I think all fight fans knew that Joshua was a heavy favourite, and most of us thought it was going to go early. And Dex right, it couldn't. In theory, it should have gone early. Like, he turned away. The fight should have been stopped there. Lucky for the fans, it wasn't. Pulev's stock would have risen because he showed good heart, good chin, but. It was good performance, real good performance from Joshua. I think we sort of saw another improvement. And back to the original question, I think that's fair. That's a fair thing to have as a fighter, is to carry on making them improvements, as long as there's no glaring, obvious inadequacies that you can only put down to like lack of experience.
I wanted to talk about his Joshua's persona. Really, I mean, you had Friday the weigh-in. Seemed like an unnecessary, if you like, sort of exchange of words. Pulev obviously started it, from what I remember, before Joshua even weighed in. And then on Saturday, the ring walk seemed a bit strange, the sort of voiceover, the video on screen before he came out. And then afterwards, I thought it was very strange, his interview. I don't know whether he just didn't want Tyson Fury to be any part of his night. He wanted it all to be about him. He didn't want to start bringing him into it. But if you're asked what's next, when everybody knows what's next, really, or what we want to be next, do you not just call him out? Just get yourself on the front foot, because Tyson Fury will respond, as he did. And instead of people talking about what Joshua said to Fury, they're talking about Joshua really just avoiding it until he really had to say something, and then Tyson Fury taking full advantage.
I thought it was bizarre, that whole interview. Apparently he didn't want to do it at all. I mean, he even said that in the interview. He didn't want to do an interview. And it's like, hold on a second. It is Sky. These are the people that are helping you become a multimillionaire. You got to do the interview kind of thing. I don't know. I mean, it's hard for me. It's a good one for George, just because it's hard for us to imagine what it's like after having a fight like that, knocking someone out like that, and then having to sort of talk to the nation. A bit strange, but I did find it, I found Friday strange as well, because it's not like Joshua, and none of us outside of his real inner team really know him at all. As a journalist, you cover him, but he obviously presents something that he wants to present, just like every other boxer does. So you can't really draw any conclusions from that. But there was a slight change in that. There was that, that happens at a weigh-in, and let's not forget he's a fight. He lives his life fighting people, so it's not as if he's a shrinking violet or anything. He's in there, and if someone puts it on him like Pulev tried to, then he's obviously going to react. But it's just weird, isn't it? Because we've obviously known Joshua, and he's been in the public eye now for 8 years, 9 years, really, since he won the gold medal. Before that, if you were aware of him as an amateur, so. And even now, you're still struggling to sort of work him out. But the interview was weird. I don't know why he didn't take that opportunity to really call Fury out and put the ball in his court. I don't know if he's worried about over-promising something that he knows essentially is not down to him, because he knows that certain things happen contractually and the fight won't happen, and then it looks bad on him. So I don't know if that's in his mind frame, or if he's just like, I don't want to give Fury any shine. I'm not sure why he would want to do that, because surely you want to build the fight. I don't know. I'm interested to hear what George says about that. Like, when you do come out of a ring and they shove a microphone in your face, like, how hard is it to compose your thoughts and be like, right, what do I say now? What do I want to convey here? Because I guess that's kind of what he struggled with, or he made the decision to not talk about Fury. That was actually what he was trying to do. It was just, it was a weird one for me to get my head around.
Yeah, well, it is tough. It's tough. Like, obviously, you've just finished a fight. You might have adrenaline going. I mean, depends on how tough the fight was, is how calm and composed and how you got your thoughts together for the interview after. But it's a massive part of your career, of the fight, of the process. So you have to get it right. You have to nail it down. You want people to perceive you the right way. Sometimes for me it was like trying to make sure I'm gonna get the next fight that I need, that I want, or to climb the ladder, or whatever that may be. That sometimes, like, you want to antagonize a few people, but you don't want to alienate yourself to everyone else, So you do have to be really conscious of what you're saying and how you're presenting yourself. And I think he didn't want to do it. As you say, like in the interview, he says, I don't even want to do an interview, because he probably doesn't back himself at this point to get his point across well enough where he ain't going to get some backlash or come unstuck. He's up against Fury at the moment, who is a genius, as it turns out, when it comes to the public's imagination, like the public's opinion of him. At the moment, he's riding the wave where he can't do no wrong. And essentially that's just because of his performances in the ring, and he's, he's undefeated. He lost the belts. He come unstuck. He fell on hard times, however they were put together at the start, like in terms of how they were explained to the public. People didn't care, but then he goes out and he takes a fight against Wilder. And on paper, we're thinking, oh, he's been thrown to the lions here. And he gets off the deck in the last round, comes back to life, and, he gets a draw. So he's been hard done by. He's shown heart. He's got over depression, which is very important to people right now. He's lost all this weight. That's why he's so popular in America, without being too rude. Like, you get in a cab in Vegas and they know that guy who lost all that weight, because there's a lot of people out there trying to lose weight. And Joshua, kind of, his whole career, he could say and do whatever he wanted. And it was no one ever shined a spotlight on him. No one ever tried to pull him apart. If they did, there'd be enough people out there, influential people, to attack you and to put you down. So, he was the man to lead from the front in terms of developing the partnership between Sky Sports and Matchroom Boxing, who are the front runners in the UK, and now a massive part of boxing around the world. They've got the most marquee name in heavyweight boxing. But now, as I say, he's up against Fury. Fury's very good. He comes across. You can edit him down well. He's likable. He's funny. And Joshua. I don't know. He's difficult to tick every box. To be real to yourself. To this year he spoke out for his community and stuff like that. And then there's always going to be a certain element of people you're going to alienate in that respect. In terms of the fights, because of the performances in the ring, because he's boxed Ruiz and got beat, and then come back, and then people are like, where have you had to work hard? Like they're comparing Tyson Fury, like Tyson Fury had to go to the States and get off the floor and get robbed, and then finally he's getting his rewards. What have you had to do? You know, it's all been too easy for you, which ain't his fault. Every fighter wants to have the easiest and most successful route to the top, but if I was him, I wouldn't have it any other way. But it's, you know, it's the Anthony Joshua show. You know, it's everyone in and around there talking about Anthony Joshua. There's fighters at home desperately tweeting about the fight because they're hoping that their name's going to crop up on, you know, the ticker tape at the bottom of Sky. You know, we cut to an advert and it's Anthony Joshua, and then the next advert is Anthony Joshua. You know, so it's like it is the Anthony Joshua show, and I just think in terms of relating to the everyday boxing fan, that makes it a little bit more difficult. But if once a Fury fight's made, if he goes out and he knocks Fury out in 7 rounds, well then he's king of the castle again. And he probably knows that. He's just not sure if it's going to happen. And he probably, you know, both of them fighters are at the top of their game. So they're probably, I don't know how confident are they of beating each other in that sort of way. So yeah, it's a real interesting one on how people are taking, you know, how people are thinking and feeling about Joshua. But he's I don't know who in his camp does he sit and discuss strategy in terms of what he's going to say and do afterwards. You know, he's very much promoting his management company now, which is 528 Management. They had Lawrence Okoli on the undercard. I mean, Okoli was supposed to be fighting for a world title, you know, and then they, you know, the opponent tested positive for coronavirus. They couldn't get him a replacement that WBO was sanctioned in time. So he's, you know, what's his long-term goal here? It's kind of like, is he now moving, looking beyond himself boxing to the future? Is he got like an exit strategy? Is he winding down? Is he looking? Does he want to go out on that big high? You know, become undisputed and then say, all right, you had me, I'm gone now. You got to appreciate me while I'm here. Who knows?
It's definitely going to be a fascinating build-up. But I think if Joshua sort of carries on in this vein, I feel like it'll be very difficult for him to endear himself to people. Especially, it's one thing seeing him in isolation, but as you've said, George, Fury, whether you agree with it or not, whether you like him or not, he is a people's champion, right? People do relate to him much more, and I think that can the sort of it will only diverge between people not being too keen on Joshua and liking Fury as the fight builds up.
I don't know. I disagree. I disagree. I think there's enough. First of all, I think there's enough of a clear parting of the camps already. If you like Fury, you hate Joshua, and vice versa, basically. And I think that the general public still love Joshua, and the casual fan who will be engaged by the build-up will still side with Joshua. I just feel like that. And George mentioned about where the strategy lies in that camp. Freddie Cunningham's his manager, who they've been together from day one. Andy Bell's his press guy. So it's like they've been there from the very start. So this is all sort of part of the plan. Obviously, getting knocked out by Andy Ruiz wasn't, but they'll come up with a way of approaching this. And not dropping the ball and working out how to, because to be honest, they haven't put a foot wrong for a long time. It only really went wrong in New York, and we don't really know exactly what happened there, other than in the end he got beaten up by Andy Ruiz. But you know what happened in the build-up? Did they overdo it? How, you know, what went wrong there? But I feel like Joshua will still come out in the build-up as the good guy, and it will be a very clear split. But I must say, I'm a bit concerned about the fight. I think there's huge hurdle, like colossal hurdles.
Declan? No,
I'm just saying, like I can't right now figure out how it's going to work, because Anthony Joshua in the UK right now can't fight on anything but Sky. Okay, as far as I know, Fury could fight away from BT, so he could fight on Sky. But then in America, Fury's got to fight on ESPN, and Joshua fights on DAZN. So then it's like, okay, but DAZN's a streaming service. So does that allow then it to be on ESPN? But then who's going to buy the pay-per-view if you can get DAZN for $9.99 a month. So then they're going to be like, well, that can't happen because we won't make any money on pay-per-view. BT will go, well, we can't split this pay-per-view because no one's going to buy it for us because we haven't got Sky Sports News. We haven't, everyone will just go on Sky. We're not going to make any money. So already I'm like, I'm fascinated to see what the first call is because as far as we can tell, they've agreed 50-50. So it's like, sweet. That used to be the big hurdle. Actually, now that seems to be the easiest one. It's like 50-50 call. What about everything else now? I mean, I don't want to. I feel like, it's going to end up in Saudi, and the money will just be so vast that no one will really care about anything because the money would be absurd. But yeah, I'm interested to see what approach they take, and also how Joshua feels about. He might be told to act a certain way, or they might come up with a plan to be this guy and do this, and he might not like that. He seems to be. He's one of those guys where he does do it for himself. And like George said, he's clearly thinking about other things already. He's totally aware of what he's doing. I think it's going to be the next 6 months is going to be from like a boxing business perspective is going to be really interesting.
No, you're right. And, we shouldn't assume that it's going to happen. But at the moment, as you said, the state of play is the 50-50 split would appear to be agreed. And both, if Joshua didn't say it, Eddie Hearn said it. The work starts this week. Bob Arum said work starts this week. So what's left? Is it for all 4 belts? That's up to the WBO. That's up to Alexander Usyk. And then a date, they've said April to June. A venue, I can't see it. There's no way you get a full Wembley before June. You've got the Euros, so surely it's going to have to be Middle East. And then you're right. The TV is a situation, but it's not. You've just explained that to me, and I understand it. But you cannot have a fight of this magnitude fall down because of something that you would struggle to explain to the man on the street. You can't, and you're absolutely right. And if whether DAZN can basically do a one-off pay-per-view, which basically goes against their whole ethos, I guess. I don't know, but surely, George, these things can be ironed out in the fullness of time with some cool heads.
I'm not sure. I'm not sure.
You two.
Because Dexpot, and I think when DAZN launched, you could get DAZN in the States for a year for $99. Like that was like, and I couldn't understand. You can get DAZN in UK now. They're premiering with Alvarez versus Smith. I think it's £2 or £3 a month or something crazy. And you're like, so States is like. The pay-per-views out there are $100 sometimes. If it's a big pay-per-view, it's $100. Or I can get a sports channel for an entire year for the same price. It's just, it's not even close. Like, there's not even debatable. Even if you can't be bothered to get your laptop out and sign up, you would do for that, So how are they going to bridge that gap? Who's going to get it? To me, it seems like who's going to get it? Is it going to go to ESPN or is it going to go to DAZN? I'd imagine if ESPN have paid the money that was reported at the start when Fury first signed a deal, it's all on the basis of him fighting Joshua for all the belts or whatever the equivalent is, where they recoup that money. Because they wouldn't have set the world alight with his first 2 fights that he had in Vegas. I covered one of them. It was through the night for BT, one of the longest nights of my life. But yeah, so I can't see a company like ESPN just letting it go, and I can see a company like DAZN being, well, our business model is resting on stuff like this right now. We can't give that away. They've had to have a shuffle round, in terms of. I don't know what the deal is now with Alvarez, who signed this mega deal with DAZN, and it was carved out. It was nothing to do with Eddie Hearn at Matchroom, who apparently had exclusivity with DAZN, but it's not. Golden Boy had this one-off deal, and so yeah, I don't know. The Middle East sounds like right. You want no fans, but you want to get the money that you would get if you had fans. Right, we'll have it. How they. But what was their deal originally? Because they're not just going to pay money just to host something. They're going to want something on the back end. That are they going to want a split of the revenue from TV? And that's what It's what usually host nations do. Again, it's very complicated. This is why big fights don't happen. This is why Mayweather Pacquiao didn't happen for so long. It's not because neither of them wanted it. Who doesn't want to earn millions and hundreds of millions of dollars? But it'd be interesting. I want to say it will happen, but I don't. I just don't see. I just don't see yet the logistical route to it. But maybe it's already been done. It's been spoken about for a long time now. I'm sure it's already been done. Stuff has been signed off. They've worked out how they can do it. But sadly, I'm not privy to that, and I don't know.
It is a rare occasion that I am the positive one in the room.
Your mic's gone mad.
Yeah.
Oh, no.
You're still muted, Mike. Mark.
Just the best way to be.
Yeah. So, but I don't. I just refuse to accept that something. I know it's complicated, but surely they'll find a way. And let's assume they do find a way, because otherwise, 2021 might be as bad as 2020. Based on last night, assuming obviously there's no chance to see Fury get in the ring, how do we see the fight going?
Who do you want to go first?
I'll go first. Yeah, I think we saw a bit more improvement from Joshua, and each time I see heavyweights box, I go, you change your mind. I change my mind constantly, and I think if the fight gets made and the build up happens, the train starts rumbling along and everyone's opinions are jumping in, and then you actually sit down and assess and break it down. I think Joshua's got he's got to hit him and hurt him. He's got to hit him and hurt him to have a bearing on this fight. Can he make them adjustments and find a home for his big shots? Certain things I don't think. Joshua's right uppercut yesterday was it worked, it landed, but from a technical point of view, it's not the best shot. It's definitely not a great shot to be leading with from long range, stepping in with a big right uppercut, because you're leaving so much of your body and the side of your head exposed. So even if you've got your left hand dressed nicely, you think your right uppercut's is there. So you've got all this side of your face and so much of your body exposed. You never trade an uppercut with a hook, with a guy, with a left hooker. Joshua doesn't. Fury doesn't have a huge left hook, but it's enough, And as you say, these guys are. Fury might walk to the ring at 19 stone. If he lands a check left hook on you, that's going to hurt. So that's one shot that I think Joshua needs to eradicate if he's going to fight someone as long and tall and skillful as Fury. It's okay if you're sitting on the chest. If he was in on the chest and he's just trying to work away, that's a safe shot. Of course, it's a safe shot. But he doesn't pull his head off the line when he throws that right uppercut. It's a big, solid, meaty shot, but he leaves himself exposed. Heavyweights get away with it a lot of the time because the guy in front of him will be so worried about that shot landing that he's not thinking about punching with him or making a quick defense and countering. He's probably just worried about defending it and making sure it don't land on his chin. I think a lot of the influential people, as in the bigger names in British boxing, will be backing Joshua. Maybe because they're friends, they have connections, they work at Sky. And then I think a lot more of the wider boxing community will be backing Fury. And then there'll be some that will sit on the fence and play, devil's advocate between both. Obviously, Fury, I think he's still signed to Frank Warren. He's an MTK fighter. There's so many MTK fighters, are up and down the country. Good fighters, prospects, everything, and most of their fights are on BT at the moment. Obviously, Joshua, he's got a bunch of fighters that he's signed up with his own management company, as well as him being Sky through and through. So the build-up would be real interesting, I think. It'd be interesting to get a take on people who maybe don't even want to back one fighter, but do because they have to, keep it interesting. But I think in terms of the way the fight goes, I think we'll see another massive improvement from Joshua. Now he's working with some other coaches and he'll know what he's prepping for. It might be a bit of a stalemate at the start, and then it might take a round or two to catch fire. But I don't know. I genuinely don't know. I'm sort of carting around the answers around the question here, but it'd be fascinating if Joshua lands a big shot on him, on Fury, hurts him. In the first couple of rounds, he's got the size to do that, and then seeing where it goes from there. But at the same time, Fury might be that bigger man now, marching down and look to put it on him. He's still got to say Fury, I think. Still got to say Fury. But by the time it comes up, it'll be very interesting. Be very, very interesting what the general consensus is of how this fight's going to go.
Mr. Taylor?
I've never been. I don't think I've been more convinced about a fight of this magnitude before. I cannot see how Fury loses in any way. I can't see what look Joshua can give him to win, because I don't see him landing anything massive. What I will say, and again, I don't wish to be negative, but I reckon it will be a bit of a stinker based compared to.
You just hate boxing, don't you? You just
compared to what I mean by that is compared to the magnitude and the excitement levels and just the absolute pandemonium and how people are going to be feeling about this fight by if and when it ever gets here. I think it's going to be one of them, a bit like a Mayweather night where you go, oh, okay, right, okay, it's this. Because I think if Fury chooses to box him and get on his toes and move around and do a Klitschko, he wins. So I think he could just choose to do that and he wins. And I honestly, there's no disrespect to Joshua. There's nothing. I think Fury is an obviously elite heavyweight and one that you could put in any era and he'd do okay, if not be the man in many of them. And I just feel like if he wanted to box Joshua, he would, and he wouldn't have any problem. I genuinely can't see what Joshua can do in that sort of a fight to trouble him, really. He was working the levels really nicely against Pulev, that jab to the body. It was interesting. Obviously, Mayweather was there. Big Mayweather gym sort of thing, that switching the levels, feinting to the head jabs, just getting that water in the basement. But I don't think he would be able to do that against Fury. He's too clever. And then you think, okay, well, like George said, but what if he lands a big one? So already you're sort of thinking, okay, we're basing this on he's got a puncher's chance. So that's what I mean. Of course, Joshua could knock out Tyson Fury. He could knock out any man in the world. Like, if he lands on him, he could. I just think Fury's too smart, too good, too quick, but also too massive. He's like a force field around him if he wants to have one. If he chooses to have it and thinks, I want to go and make a statement in what is the biggest fight in British boxing history, my legacy fight, I want to go and do what I did to Wilder, maybe then he plays a little bit into Joshua's hands and it becomes a war and he gets a cut or he breaks a hand or something like that. And then, of course, but I feel like it's in Fury's hands to lose. I think it's Fury's to lose. And I've never been, the only one I was as sure about this with a super fight was Mayweather-Pacquiao. Again, I said, no, I could not see how Pacquiao could trouble him. And again, it was a size thing. And I feel like really, in essence, this is a size thing. Joshua's massive. He's not as massive as Fury. And in the end of the day, it comes down to physics. And it's like, he's got those inches and range on him. Plus, he's really, really talented. I think it's Fury's to lose in however way you look at it. What about you?
No, I agree. I remember before the first Fury Wilder fight. So of course, Fury was very much on his way back. I didn't think he'd beat Wilder, but I said he's definitely the best heavyweight in the world. And I didn't even think it was close, to be honest. In terms of I think maybe, Georgie alluded to it the other week when we were talking about pound for pound, but I don't think it's really close in terms of who he is as a fighter and the attributes that he has.
Yeah, exactly. It's a style thing, isn't it? Don't say it, but styles make fights. It's a style thing.
Yeah.
How do you beat? I just can't see it.
Yeah, and then you have Wilder. Okay, so how does Wilder win? He just levels him out with that right hand. And I saw it was, of course, just 2 years ago the other week since that first fight. And I saw that 12th round knockdown again. And how the referee didn't wave that fight off. I mean, any other time, that's just done. And now nobody argues. And then suddenly he pops up. I mean, thankfully he did and everything else. But so that was Wilder's chance. And he put him down twice and it wasn't enough. And then we saw Fury come back and change his tactics and win the rematch. And so, I think I have to agree. And I don't want us to say this is going to be huge in 6 months, a great build-up. But actually, Fury's going to walk it. But maybe the only way he doesn't win is if mentally he's not there. And listen, that might happen. Who knows? Maybe he gets so wound up. Maybe he is desperate to knock him out. He's been saying it for so long. And maybe something goes wrong. But if you look at the attributes of the two men, and like I said earlier, you watch Joshua and you can't watch him without that little niggling thought. But then Fury's been put down. I don't know. I think, if you look at what you know, Fury wins.
Fury's been over enough times now, hasn't he? Not so much late, but I just think you can't, as then already thinking about it, Fury lets a lazy jab go. It's a check right hand comes over the top, a drop back right hand. I mean, you can't tell me that like Joshua ain't going to be prepared for it. He ain't going to be meticulous in his build up. He ain't going to be drilling the tactics. It seems like he's the sort of chap who likes to be well rehearsed for everything. Even down to the point we were talking about earlier, he didn't feel comfortable in the interview. He doesn't want to do the interview because he's usually very well rehearsed. And now he's bringing in additional coaches. Now, these coaches have got to bounce ideas off of each other about how they think they should approach this fight and fundamentally what is Joshua capable of, like in terms of technically what can he do, how would that work, what do we do to take away Fury's strengths, what are Fury's strengths? He's quite versatile, he's done many different things throughout fights. How will he prepare for a Joshua fight and how do we deal with it? I think, if anything, if Joshua's got a good finish, he's a very good finisher. If he has any sort of success, he's going to jump on Fury. He's going to be hitting him hard, and just because Fury's the bet that we think he's the better fighter. In principle, it kind of means it's like his fight to lose, but there's obviously so much more to it than that. There always is in boxing. So we might see a better Joshua yet.
Well, that's the thing. That's why it's not a knock on Joshua, though, is it? Because for me, like I said at the start, Joshua's not the finished article. He's nowhere near. He doesn't even know. Nobody can even picture what the finished article is. I don't think his coaches can. They don't really know. So, but for me, and Joshua said this a lot. If you look at it, Fury was, Fury's been a professional now for what, 10 years, longer, much longer. He's far further along the chain. So in that sense, it should be Fury that is the favourite and should be the one who is more established and has a style to beat Joshua. And actually, this would be too early for Joshua. Maybe that's the best way of putting it, because I don't see what Joshua turns up, because we don't really know what the best Joshua is. But you could sort of make a case that Fury knows where he's at. But the mentality thing is a big one, because what does this do? What does this build up and stuff do to both men? And at the end of the day, they are just two men in there, and anything can happen, which we know. But when, like what you said, Martin, but based on what you know, what you can see right now, I think it's a pretty clear one for Fury. But who knows? And it's probably one of them where, as the build-up goes and goes, we'll all start going like this. But that's the one rule: don't just whatever you think now, you've got to stick by it.
And, George, you mentioned sort of that Joshua can prepare for things, but there are some things with Fury you surely just can't. And let's say it does start quietly for a few rounds, but it starts quietly in a way that it's in Fury's favour. He's frustrating Joshua. Suddenly the hands are behind the back. Suddenly he's sticking his tongue out. Joshua does not strike me as a man who deals with that very well, and there's no way he can prepare for it. So he's just got to convince himself that he can deal with it, because he'll expect something. But when it happens, I'm not sure he does. And then suddenly, what if he does just throw in the kitchen, just go for it? And then what if he is still question? What if there are still questions around his gas tank, and then he empties it, and I can see him losing the fight himself as much as it being that Fury wins it.
Well, yeah, I mean, it's a fight where you might need to change and adapt throughout the fight. You might need to, this might be, what you do at the start. All right, you've lost them first few rounds. It's like boxing. You're gonna have to all right. Go change tactics now. Go to plan B, or whatever's in the locker. You got to up your activity. You're gonna have to. You got to stop him. If you get hurt or you get buzzed, you got to change the tactics. You know what I mean? Like, you make sure that don't happen again. Just survive the round or whatnot. So Fury, we've seen many different styles. Joshua, the differences have been much more subtle. He's got 6 months now, or maybe longer, to mentally prepare. If the Joshua Fury fight's going to happen, to mentally prepare to stick to your plan. Fighters have to do it. You might have a diligent, strict game plan that you have to follow through, no matter what goes on throughout the fight, and what other antics are thrown at you. It's tough. It'll be tough. It'll be a battle of his mental fitness, but it also might even be an emotional one by the time you get to that point. You're talking about fighters at the top level. You need to be physically at your A game, mentally at your A game, and emotionally you have to be there. You have to be emotionally sound, because boxing's that unique sport where you throw punches at each other. It's different. It's any sport you have to have mental strength. If you're going to stand up and take a penalty in front of 50,000 fans in a football game, or any sport like that. But in terms of getting hit and hitting someone, there's that mental and emotional element to it as well. But he's got time to prepare. That'll be fascinating as well to see whether he can. He might lose the plot in the build-up. Fury might lose the plot in the build-up. I'm sure he's lost the plot. From the outside looking in, he's lost the plot numerous times. He seems to be in a great place now. Fury,
he's great though. Wouldn't he be brilliant? Wouldn't he? Can you imagine what Fury's going to be like when he gets Anthony Joshua sat in a press conference, a series of press conferences? It's going to be.
Yeah, but I mean, imagine Joshua as a good team. They discuss what they're going to bring up, how they're going to do it, and then the things that they're going to bring up are actually going to get some traction and actually going to have an effect. Now, the Fury has talked about mental problems before. He's talked about being depressed and all these other things, and he's gone from zero to hero in terms of he proclaims himself to be the people's champion. What about if in the build up to this fight, it's a 50-50 split? And now Fury can't cope with that. He can't cope with people not believing that he's the number one in the division. I haven't followed his out of boxing stuff diligently, religiously, or whatever, but he doesn't something to do with BBC Sports personality. He's like, I don't want that. I don't need that. I'm the people's champion. That's all that matters. What happens if, in the build-up to him and Joshua, there are some influential people out there who are saying and converting the casual fans to backing Joshua? Is he going to cope with that? Is that not going to rile him up and ruin him? Like we assume that he's cool, calm, and collected, but is that all based on the fact that he's now everyone loves him? In this era, with social media, and you can literally find out what people think about you straight away, instantly. Whereas, in a couple of decades ago, you couldn't, and you see high-profile sports people struggle with adapting to real life because he found out people didn't really care, or people used to talk nastily about you in the pub behind your back, but you never knew about it. Because when you meet someone in Tesco's or you're queuing up for the post office or something, no one goes, "Oh, I thought you was a beep," or yeah. They say something nice or they say nothing at all, But I think that'll be fascinating because I almost want to see it. I mean, I don't want to see either of them lose the plot, but you will get some heated debates. We'll get some.
Here's a question for both of you, right? Who's the better, more fearsome? Actually, who's the more beatable fighter, right? Vladimir Klitschko, 2015 vintage, or Anthony Joshua right now?
I'd say.
Who's better and who's more beatable?
Joshua's more beatable.
Oh.
I mean, Klitschko was unbeatable, at that time. I mean, I don't even think Fury beat the best Klitschko. I think he got in Klitschko's head. He didn't take him seriously, or and that point in his career, he was getting on a bit. So I think Klitschko. I still go with Klitschko.
Like, you could argue that if Fury beats Joshua, it wouldn't even be in his top 2 wins. It would be his 3rd best win.
Yeah,
no, I'd rank him in front of the Wilder, just because I think Wilder's shown some limitations, like in terms of just so many limitations in terms of his mindset, even frightening punch power. At times, has showed how he sets it up, but at times not. I think Joshua's a better fighter than Wilder. I don't say Wilder might be able to just punch straight through the guard and the fight's over if he boxed Joshua. But if they each fought, 20 opponents, who would probably look better at overall them, it might be Joshua. So fascinating, interesting.
Yeah, I do think Klitschko would still probably just about be the better win, but I think possibly not to. Of course, it was a great win against Klitschko, but I think by beating Klitschko, Fury probably showed that what Klitschko had done up to then, in parts, hadn't been quite maybe as good as his record suggested. I would argue, but yeah, I think given and also I think we underestimated Fury hugely way back then as well. Or I certainly did, to be honest. But yeah, you're probably right. In a word, yes or no? Does the fight happen next for both men?
No.
Listen, if anyone else wants to come on the show next week with a positive frame of mind,
Fury Wilder 3 and Joshua Usyk.
No way.
No,
Joshua doesn't fight Usyk.
Do you know what, Martin? Though, you're talking to 2 people who have been disillusioned by boxing politics and everything else. The amount of time, think just as a fan, think of over the years how many times you've been let down by this sport and thought, what is going on here? And had to defend it to your mates who don't really care about boxing. And you're like, and in the end you think, what? No, actually, maybe you're right. I mean, George has seen it far more in depth than us, but it just seems so fanciful right now that the 2 of them, it will be the next fight. It just seems like it will be this massive gift. And that's almost how you feel as a boxing fan. When you get something good now, you're like, oh, yes, what a gift. But really, it should just be that you get the 2 best people competing against each other, just like you do in every other sport.
George, were you a no as well?
Yeah, no. I don't even think Fury fights Wilder next. He might just have a little knockover in the early part of 2021. And and they let the WBO thing play out. I'm not sure. I'm not sure if Joshua fights Usyk, but I can't see them two fighting each other next. I just think when it's going to happen, we'll know. We will know. There won't be no hypotheticals. It'll be done. I don't see the value in keeping it a surprise or shock value. If you're Matchroom Bob Arum, you want this. You want people to know, You'll sell more pay-per-views if you say, right, once Joshua wins this, then the face-off is in the ring, the contracts are signed, it's done. They didn't do that last night, so I don't think it's done.
And also, Rob McCracken, one of the best coaches in the world, totally so astute, such an intelligent guy. If you're Rob McCracken right now, must know that his guy has got a better chance of beating Fury in 18 months. 6 months, 12
18 months?
I'm just saying 2 years. I'm not saying it's going to take 18 months, but if you look at the course of their two careers right now, Joshua's still going like this and Fury's sort of at his peak. And they must know that the later they take it, the longer they leave it, the better chance Anthony Joshua's got of winning. And I'm not saying anyone's going to try and pull any fast ones and try and delay this, but I'm just saying if it gets delayed and delayed and delayed, it's only in one camp's favour as far as I can see.
I can definitely see Fury fighting. I mean, he should have fought last weekend.
Yeah.
Or at least it was talked about. So I could definitely see him fighting and other early in the new year. But Merry Christmas, boxing fans. I hope you. But anyway, this is why we're here, and it certainly is, as you say, that we have been here before with other fights, and we've had to wait. Hopefully, it's not 18 months, but we shall see. I mean, we've spent almost an hour just talking about it, and it's not signed. So listen, we'll hopefully have months to talk about it when it is. But a fight that is happening, definitely happening in 6 days' time. It feels weird to say, actually, Callum Smith defending his world title against Canelo Alvarez, his WBA title. There will also be the WBC title and Ring Magazine titles online in Texas in front of fans again. George, it's come around quickly in the sense that it's been talked about for a long time, but of course it looked like Billy Joe Saunders' fight in May, then that was off, understandably. And then Canelo had his legal dispute with DAZN and with Golden Boy. And then I spoke to Joe Gallagher the other day, and when it was announced, when Canelo said, I'm announcing my opponent at midnight or 11 o'clock, whatever time it was, they did not know it was Callum Smith. So it was news to them as well that he had the fight at 4 or 5 weeks' notice. And Callum Smith strikes me as someone who stays in the gym. But to have 4 weeks to prepare for Canelo specifically can't be a great thing.
No, it's definitely not. Definitely. Anyway, if you're a world champion, do you really want 4 or 5 weeks' notice to prepare and get your head in the zone for a fight? I'm sure Callum Smith is in the gym. He's a big guy, so he might have to be in the gym just to keep his weight in some sort of order. Otherwise, he's never going to make the weight, when on a full camp's notice, or just would naturally just bulk up and just not come back down. So. Yeah, I understand if he's in the gym, but that's not the same as preparing for any sort of fight. Someone like Smith, who has underperformed so many times before, and he's usually against opposition that you think is just beneath him, which Canelo's not. But it shows that lull in your brain activity when you should be switched on for a big fight. It's going to be tough for him. He's going there with the superstar of world boxing right now. He's going to Mexico. It seems like even the way this fight has come about, they've made him feel inadequate or insignificant. Where we'll let you know whoever it is. At midnight tonight. Oh, it's you, and he doesn't even know it's him. Obviously. I assume that he was on some sort of waiting list, that he knew he was a potential candidate, but that's not cool. That's not ideal. But that's what you do to have the higher the upper hand on someone, on fighter to fighter, bravado before any sort of fight. I think it's back to his credit. I don't think it's quite enough time, but he probably just feels like, well, I need this fight. There's nothing else out here for me. No other fights are getting made. This is a huge fight for me. It's an opportunity that if I miss it now, who knows what division Canelo's going to be fighting in next, when that fight will ever come around again. The risk reward is there. I assume he's getting paid a lot of money for it. He's now they're throwing the WBC belt in as well. That's fantastic. If I was Smith, that'd be the best part of it. That'd be the best news to become another world champion. And obviously having the status of beating, pound for pound, one of, if not the best fighter in the world right now. Down would be that, I'd want to make a big song and dance about it. If I'm going to fight Alvarez, then I want a 6-month lead-in time. I want to do a press conference in Mexico, in Vegas, in London. I want streamers out, drums beating, everyone excited, have a full camp, and then just make sure the whole world is watching when I beat this guy. So I think he's not going to have that. I don't know what effect that will have on him, because this fight is slightly different for Smith than it is for for Alvarez. I feel Alvarez is probably just like, it's another day at the office. Not that it's a foregone conclusion that he beat Smith, but Smith's not the name. He's not a name. He probably hadn't heard of him until recently. Hadn't seen much of him, unless he's one of them fighters who's right into his boxing and follows everyone. Whereas everyone in the UK has heard of Callum Smith, has heard of Alvarez, and Smith obviously knows Alvarez wants to beat that guy. So interesting, real interesting.
You fought Callum Smith. I appreciate it didn't go the way you wanted to, but what was the plan going into the fight? What had you seen that you were planning to exploit?
Well, he's a big guy. He's a really tall. He's got heavy hands. Good finisher when he hurts you. Check left hook's pretty good. If I'm the tactics for me to beat Smith would be have a razor fast left hand. I'll be changing that head and body. I'll be punching up and punching down. So it might be jab up, straight right to the body, jab down, straight right to the head. Look to mix and match, and then I'll change the angle of the right hand, so it will come straight. It will come, maybe screw it straight through the middle, bend it around the side, pull it behind the elbow. Every sort of shot like that, knowing that he's going to want to catch and fire with his left hook. And when I boxed him, that's the shot he caught me with. It caught me right on top of the head. It hurt. Very good finisher. Shook the brain a little bit. Backed up, slightly dizzy. Comes in, it's good finish. Catch him with a good body shot. And then I go down and I think the wind was knocked out of me. Still a little bit shaky in the head. Didn't make the count. But I needed to have a faster jab that night, like I had before. But my arm wasn't up for it. I had to throw caution to the wind a little bit. I wanted to apply. I felt like this fight, there's not a lot going on. Let's try and put a few more right hands involved. But obviously, once you're letting your hands go, then you're more susceptible to getting the block and fire and getting caught with shots that Smith does. But at that point, it was just like, well, might as well do this. I'd rather risk it than not put a lot of faith in what the judges are seeing here. This is a close fight. I think I was up maybe a round or so in the fight up until that point, but nothing really happened. So yeah, in terms of your you're prepping your tactics for someone like Smith. Obviously, you are always going to give away a lot of size, you know. But Alvarez is a smaller target, so that's going to be difficult for Smith to land on. Doing the Mexican pulling away from the shot, looking away from the shot to counter with. Smith wants to punch straight through the target, so you can't finish your shot 3 inches beyond the chin because he'll just move his head, and that's not enough. He's got to finish his shots a foot beyond the chin, so that he's going to punch straight through the target. Obviously, when you do that, you're kind of more susceptible to getting countered because you're more committed. And then when you do miss, you miss more drastically and more. You could be more off balance from it, and you might end up even burning up more energy doing that. So Smith's always been described as a great inside fighter. He is a good inside fighter. He puts his shots together well. I think that's why he was very interesting in the, you know, at the start of his career when he was coming through, because usually when tall guys are in against guys that are much shorter and they get in close, they ends up just getting messy and ugly, and you know the tall guys can't let their hands go, they get tangled up, whereas he punches well from the inside, bent arm shots. He can get through the middle, he can find them angles in and around the elbows through, you know, and then up through the guard. But I think Canelo's just too good. Smith has just been too flat too many times, and even at his very best, I mean, I've tried years and years to not say it, but the win over me is flattering. You know, I was nowhere near the shape that I should have been in. I had to crash the weight. I was not fit. Hadn't done any sparring. I wasn't ready for that fight. I thought I was all right, but I wasn't. So that win against me is flattering, and then you take that out of the picture. What other performances has he got over huge names that will put him in with a chance against someone like Alvarez, who's been a top quality operator, has dealt with the pressure of being that guy, being up against big guys before. I don't think Smith's got enough. I think Canelo beats him. Beats him to the punch, and just a little bit too slick and too quick for Smith. I think Alvarez wins.
Declan, we cannot draw on your insight of fighting Callum Smith, or Canelo. How do you see it going?
You are a 6'4" super middleweight though, Deck. What's that like?
Yeah, well, he's the same height as me. I don't think I've seen 12 stone since I was about 12, to be fair. So I don't know how he does it. I'm sort of the one thing that he's got on his side is size. But it's not even like the jury's out on Canelo on how he deals with tall guys, because Rocky Fielding's a different, not the same level as Callum Smith, as Callum Smith proved when they fought each other. But also the Sergey Kovalev fight, which, Kovalev wasn't at his best, but he's still a big guy. He's even bigger than Smith. So he doesn't have a problem. In fact, I would even argue that he looks good against tall people because of his style and because of the way he moves his trunk and how he operates in the pocket. And I think that Callum Smith's obviously got that really nice left hook to the body, for instance. I just see Canelo, his skill set, like the catch and counter with the right uppercut and combinations off of that, and then rolling out. I just see that Canelo's got an answer for all of Smith's strengths at the moment. But the one little thing, the little intangible, is sort of what George alluded to, is Canelo. This is not a massive fight for Canelo. Okay, there's 2 world titles on the line, but it's not like a Golovkin. He's not preparing for a fight like that. I'm not inside his head, but you would only assume that there are levels to how you prepare, and there are certain things that opponents do to your mindset and your mind frame in camp and whatever else. And I just wonder whether he might overlook Smith in a way. And I'm not saying overlook him and he hasn't trained and he doesn't care and he thinks it's easy, but maybe there's something that you just can't turn on and off. It's just something that gives you a fire in the belly, or it doesn't. And if there's any of that, then maybe Smith can capitalise on it, because Smith knows this is the fight of his life. This is the big one. This is the one. This is the one that he's dreamt about all those years and hours toiling away as an amateur and then as a professional. It all comes down to this fight. This is the one where everything changes. He's only had 4 weeks to prepare for it. Maybe he's had, 29, 30 years or whatever, however old he is to prepare for it. So that's the chance. That's the only chance I can see, is that Canelo, his eyes off the ball slightly, and then he's got a big, heavy-handed guy in front of him who this means the world to. I think it's a fascinating fight, and I think, with all that being said, I still think it's probably the best fight that can be made at super middleweight. So you can't even run that down. It's weird though, isn't it? Because it is a week away, and it doesn't feel like. And I don't know if it's due to the world we live in right now. It hasn't quite captured the imagination. But that will mean nothing to Callum Smith. I'm sure he doesn't care, or Joe Gallagher, or the brothers, or everyone in that camp. Who cares? Means nothing to them. But it just feels like a bit too much of an ask. And I hope I'm wrong. I hope next week we sit down and we go, boys, we got that one wrong. We held our hands up. I really hope that. And I shouldn't, you shouldn't say that as a journalist, but Callum Smith deserves it, I feel. And yeah, I mean, what a win it would be for him. To be honest, what a win it would be for British boxing as well. So yeah, I hope I'm wrong. I just think Canelo, I mean, for me, I would say right now he's probably number one, isn't he, pound for pound, when all things considered. So when you really think about that, can Callum Smith be the number one pound for pound guy? I mean, it would be one of the greatest wins in British boxing history, without a shadow of a doubt.
He's definitely gone under the radar. Possibly, as you mentioned, George, this is DAZN's first. Well, it's a worldwide deal. It's not just in the UK, but the fight will be on DAZN. It is only $1.99 a month initially. People do want to sign up, but again, there won't be any. Well, I assume it will be on something on Sky Sports. Well, will it? I don't know. Will it over the week? But there's not going to be any sort of same build-up as you're right. There should be for this huge fight. But if Canelo can't, and I understand what you're saying, and you may well be right, but a third Golovkin fight, I'm not even sure he's that bothered about that. If he's not up for this fight, or is not treating this fight as seriously as he can treat a fight, there are no fights. Are there out there that he can treat as being?
Yeah, it's not. I'm not saying it's not about not being up for it. He's obviously going to be up for it. He's going to be in amazing shape and whatever else. But I don't know. It just always strikes me that you either care about your opponent or you don't really. And like George said, I'm sure he hasn't been that aware of Callum Smith for that long, because why would he? He was a light middleweight until a couple of years ago, and he had his mind focused on other things. So I'm not saying he doesn't care. It's just, it might just be that little. It's a bit like with Klitschko, when people were just turning up and he was just beating them, and and it's a different thing when same with Joshua and Ruiz. It's a different thing then when that changes, and I just wonder whether this could be the one where Alvarez is not quite at the races for whatever reason, and Callum Smith is.
Well, if you look at the fight in terms of how hard is it for Alvarez. This fight is just as hard, if not harder, than a Golovkin fight. Who would you rather fight?
Actually, George, which you could argue he didn't win either of them. I'm just going to put that out there. So you're right. Yeah.
Okay. So in terms of the difficultness of this fight, if you're going to operate at super middleweight and you're not, you can make middleweight. That's tough. That's tough. You look at the other names, even like a Caleb Plant, who's a big super middleweight, very difficult to hit. Benavidez, and he's had problems. I assume there were problems. He's left his own and then come back to his own. He's not along with Golden Boy. Why is that? What has Golden Boy let him down? Has there been a big bust up, big fallout that no one's fully aware of? Has he just slowly implemented his own team and his own people that he wants to, save some money, or what is that? He's had so many names linked to this fight that's now happening last minute in December, and the names of the quality of opposition has been drastic. I mean, Avni Yildirim, I think, was mentioned at one point. If I could make the weight, I'd fight him on a day's notice. There's fighters out there that he wouldn't need to be switched on for, but if you're going to fight a fully fledged super middleweight world champion, it's Smith.
Thought it was me. Although I think what the point there was, Martin, we got an exclusive there. George is ready to fight Canelo on a day's notice.
Day's notice. Yeah. No, I said Yildirim. I'd fight Yildirim on a day's notice if I can make the weight. I don't know. I probably could. It depends. If the money was good, I'd probably just make the weight, kill myself, and still fight him and beat him. Anyway, so the point was that there's been huge levels of like who's going to fight. But if he's going to fight a fully fledged super middleweight world champion in Smith, he's going to have to be switched on for this fight. It's going to be a hard fight, if he's not at the races. And I said this as soon as the fight was made. That there's so many tangibles outside of the ring that may have an effect in the ring. It's in many ways it make it a little bit more difficult to make a prediction. Is he fuming? Like, is he angry? Is he seething? Is he fighting on his own for a third of the money that he should be? Or less? And how is that? Is that going to spur him on and make him perform better, or is that going to have a negative effect on his performance? Who knows? Who knows? It makes it interesting. I think it makes it a little bit more interesting to this fight. But for me, it's just a bit of a shame. It's a bit of a shame. If I was Smith, I still would be a little bit gutted that this fight hasn't been 6 months in the making. We have, if he gets this win, it might semi go under the radar for him. Or it won't be the huge, momentous win that it could have been. Now that it's it's going to be the first fight on a brand new platform in the UK, DAZN. It's not going to be his biggest fights have come away from Sky. Actually, really, he had his fights in the Super Series, which were on ITV. This one now is on DAZN. Since being a champion, he's had two wins. One was on an undercard. One was free to air against Ryder. But yeah, that's just me. I've always got to find something to moan about.
No, it's certainly a fascinating fight. And listen, again, credit that it's however it's happened, whoever's earning what, credit that it is happening. What a way to go out pretty much the year. And we will be back, of course, on Sunday, just a few hours after it, if everyone's awake, to review. Just finally, this week, there's a huge discussion going on at the moment about concussion in sport, football, initially rugby as well. And I feel like that's what's led to some discussion now as well, once again, about the safety of boxing, about why we do it, should it be banned, etc., etc. And of course, there are counter arguments, Deck, you've made them in the week about what it does for people. And there's a massive difference between fighting in an amateur gym as you grow up, and then fighting professionally. And sure, we saw it last night how brutal it can be. Correct me if I'm wrong, George, but I don't think you would say that boxing saves you or anything. But presumably, way back in your younger days, it taught you, as is often said, discipline, self-respect, etc., to respect others as well.
Well, yeah, definitely. I mean, all the cliche traits that come with being a working class kid who takes up boxing, it does. It instills discipline. You have to be accountable. You have to be dedicated. You have to make sacrifices. There's loads of things that are good lifelong lessons that you pick up as a kid. This one is a slippery slope, really. Do you know what I mean? If you're gonna throw boxing under the bus first and use it because you can't get your you can't get your head around it that it's two people trying to knock each other unconscious. Yeah, and I said it earlier on the show that boxing has physical at the top level. You have to be physical, mental, and emotional. There's that emotional element, and some people it just won't be for them. Like some people, when I talk to them, they just can't comprehend getting punched in the face. Like that's weird. That's bizarre. And for me, it makes no. I've been doing it my entire life. There's no squealing inside my belly at the thought of that. So, but the concern about throwing boxing under the bus is that for health reasons is that What next? Like, where are we gonna? You'll end up eradicating sport if you don't want to do anything that's slightly risky, because it's each to their own, and everyone's different, and that's like part and parcel of why people love sport. Sometimes people can, they're a fan of the sport, and then they want to dip their toe in. Lots of journalists, end up doing boxing classes, because they love the sport so much, but they haven't decided to pursue it professionally, or it's more of a hobby. But if you're going to start picking on sports for being dangerous, like, are we going to start? What about motorsports? I'd rather be slipping shots than driving at 200 plus miles an hour around a racetrack. That's more dangerous for me. Rugby, football, all them concussive things that pick up throughout your career are going to have an effect on you. They are going to have an effect. But it's each to their own. People still need sport. Like, we realized that this year in lockdown, when people need sport, like, they need that release. They need that camaraderie when there's something to talk about with their friends. It's a reason to leave the house. Of course, the mental and physical well-being from it, of the health benefits of being fit, being switched on. Every parent wants their kids to do sport, wants their kids to be sporty, because they know it's good for them, and I feel like we're going to end up in a period where, through people worrying about being safe all the time, that we're going to end up with sport that's zero contact, because I love snooker, but if it was the only sport, I'd probably get sick of it. And I do love snooker. So, I think the article that I saw that was like, it's not for me no more. It come out the week of the pay-per-view fight. Made no real sense. It's like, it's not for you, great. Don't watch. Just don't watch. There's plenty of things out there that are not for me. I just don't watch them. I don't write an article. Yeah, I mean, to get down to the argument, I don't think there's anything wrong with it. Like, I'm not exactly sure how to break it down, but having a fight is kind of normal, isn't it? Like, it's been around forever. It's like, and to do it in a controlled environment is a good thing. I don't know. I'm not exactly sure how to put it, but I don't see anything wrong with it. I just don't agree that punching someone's a bad thing if it in that situation. So yeah, I don't know, but maybe just because I've boxed forever, who knows.
I think what was strange for me about that story, he said, I watched a dozen fights a year, and now I've realised that it's really bad. Well, boxing hasn't changed.
No.
So it felt a bit opportunistic. But Declan, obviously you had some brief thoughts in the week, but the floor is yours.
Yeah, obviously I didn't like the article. I didn't really care for the article. What I did take massive exception to was the final paragraph, which literally said P.S. The argument that it saves lives is the least convincing of all. First of all, I'm like, okay, well, what's a more convincing argument then? What, that it makes you fit? I don't understand what could be more convincing than that. And it clearly, obviously, then just drew a line and said, I'm not up for a debate on this in any way. And it's like, okay, well then, fine. Like, don't watch boxing. If you don't, it's cool. I don't understand why I needed to read that in the Times. Like, my mum doesn't really watch boxing. She doesn't go and write about it. Like, nobody cares. What I do take massive exception to is this idea that it doesn't. There's no value to the fact that it saves lives. George mentioned snooker there. I mean, snooker hasn't saved lives. It might have changed a couple, made a few blokes richer. The reason for that is because there's no peril. There's no risk involved. I mean, you could get pretty risky, you could get pretty heated. You might end up getting hit by a cue after a particularly, difficult and touchy match with someone. But the fact is, you don't There's no peril in snooker, and that's why it will not change the lives of people, of young kids who need something, because there's no reason to go in there and actually apply themselves. There's no reason to go into I don't know, are there snooker clubs? Well, they're obviously, where do you learn? Where do you cut your teeth? You don't go into a club. You don't, even football, the most popular sport in the country, you can go and get away with it. You've got no reason to turn up and really respect everyone. And you don't walk in the first day and realize, okay, there is always going to be someone bigger and badder than me. I better, like, there you go. My ego is left at the door. I'm going to start applying myself. I'm going to support this person. For instance, one of the coaches at one of the clubs that I spent time at, Dougie, you know, the guy made you feel like 100 meters tall when you walked out of there. And what that would do to a kid who's never had that before is just, it's beyond, you know, you can't even explain that. And the problem is that you get naysayers often, for the most part, have never spent any time in a boxing club, for first and foremost, whether that's a matter of privilege that they've never had to, or that it's out of choice that they've never fancied it, because it can be daunting. But as soon as you spend any time in a boxing club, you realize, like for me as a journalist and someone who covers this sport and therefore publicizes it a lot, sometimes you can be at a fight or something happens in the world of boxing, someone gets hurt, someone gets their life changed forever, killed, you know, whatever it is. You do start thinking, what is all this about? Like, what are we doing this for? And then you go back to the club, or you remember that the lives it's changed. And the problem is that in the article in particular, and what the naysayers always say, is that there's the lethal risk. If someone dies, it's because you've done the job too well and all that sort of stuff. Actually, go to an amateur club. That lethal violence is the furthest thing away from the truth. That's not what it's about. You could have club kids who boxed 50, 60 times. They could never really even get hurt, like really seriously hurt in any way. They might have got more hurt playing rugby. So it's not about lethal violence for the most part. Okay, yeah, at the top upper echelons, that's what it becomes. And then you get an opportunity for these guys to make a lot of money. And I was speaking to Ron Lewis, a very established journalist in England, and you know, been doing it for years and years. And he made a very good point, which summed it up for me. Go and ask them why they do it. Go and ask these kids why they do it. And then someone like the journalist who wrote the piece, you know, basically saying boxing should be, that it's not for him anymore and it's brutal and all this sort of stuff, then you might get some idea. Go and ask these kids why they choose to go and box at this point and what it does for them, because that is the only thing you're going to need to hear. And I think that really sums it up for me, because, and the problem is that you can't even get across to people, because at the end of it, it's still like, well, they don't need to punch each other in the head. It's like, actually, I'm sorry, but they do, because that is what gets these kids engaged with it. And that element of peril is what makes boxing different to all the others, and why no other sport in the world can do for lives what boxing does.
Very well said. George, I know you said you're getting punched in the face doesn't bother you, but what thoughts did you give during your career? What thoughts do you give now that you're retired to the fact that you have been repeatedly punched? Well, I'm sure you did plenty of punching as well, but you know what I mean? You've taken a lot of blows. And what are your thoughts and fears, perhaps, of what that means for your later life?
Well, yeah, you know, I'm sure I'm at a much higher percentage of getting dementia or something like that, and I hope that one day I don't get that. It's obviously it's a genuine concern, but it's something that I kind of was aware of from the get-go, from the start, from being a tiny kid. And stuff like that you just don't care about when you're a kid anyway. So, but the clubs up and down the country, they're always run by brilliant people who, they're the ones who change your lives in many ways. You know, they're the ones that instill all the traits that you'll need in future life to be a good human being, to be a successful, happy human being. And if you're no good, they ain't gonna, you know, it's not the idea of kids going in and just getting pummeled by other kids. You know, I was at the Dale Youth ABC, was one of the best clubs in London, if not one of the best clubs in the country. Obviously, they've had an Olympic champion, James DeGale, numerous national champions. But he was always taken care of. Ernie Harris, he's not with us no more. The competition secretary, one of the nicest people you could ever meet, right? And the matchmaking, you're talking about like kids who are like 14 years of age, and when he's matching for a club show, the weight has got to be within a pound of each other, and sometimes this kid's 4 months older and he's had 3 more fights. Like, Ernie, I don't care, mate. Just get me a fight, anything will do. Like, at this point, there's no one left. I'm a big lad for the weight. I'll take anything. So that they have your safety is paramount. It's professional boxing where it becomes a little bit more acceptable, but that's because adults are in control of their own lives to a certain degree, and sometimes need a little bit of saving from themselves. There are some safety elements to boxing that I feel there could be some improvements being made of, like for one, that all the major governing bodies now want you to do weight checks in the build up to a fight, but it's kind of like it's a false negative, because it doesn't matter about your weight, it's about your hydration levels. Because if your hydration levels are low, that's when you could sustain an injury. So you need to test fighters' hydration levels compared to their championship weight. But you're opening up a hornet's nest if you're doing that, because all of a sudden there's going to be kids out there who can't make the weight no more, and they might be a multiple weight. They might be a unified world champion at a particular weight, and now they're going to have to move up a division or two. But boxing it does save lives. It's not just cliche. It turns people's lives around. It's available to anyone. It's from in this country. There's always a local club that's within a commutable distance from pretty much everyone in the country, and for me, working class background, grew up in a house my mum and dad didn't own. My mum and dad didn't go to university there, and yet I've managed to secure my future for me and my kids through boxing. I had to work hard. I had to dedicate myself. Maybe I could have done that in another field, but boxing's allowed me to do that. Many fighters, amateur fighters, they want to turn pro, and I talk to them and I'm like, enjoy your boxing, mate. Enjoy your boxing, because I'm not sure it changes when you turn pro. But at the same time, they're looking at me going, how can you tell me the pro game's no good for you? You just showed up in a big flash car. Like, you ain't got a job. Go to work. Like, so I'm like, yeah, it can do so much for so many. And it was a bit of a I wasn't keen on the article where it's like, yeah, I've watched it and now I don't think I will. It's like, all right, great, but that's just because you've just got nothing to watch right now. I don't think it's that brutal. There's far more brutal sports out there, and there's far more dangerous sports out there. So boxing is the noble art. It's been around forever. It's arguably the oldest sport there is. And long may it continue, and long may people watch it and enjoy it, and long may it change lives.
Well, I can't put it any better than that. And let's hope that continues with Joshua and Fury next year. Nah. So that is all for this. That's all for this week for our first live show. Largely smooth. As I mentioned, we will be back next week with a first look at Canelo Alvarez against Callum Smith, see how that fight went down. And then, well, there won't be much happening the week after that, but I'm sure we will find plenty of fights to look ahead to. Please do, as I said, give the video a thumbs up, give the channel a subscribe, rate and review the podcast. If you're listening, thank you, Declan. Thank you, George. Been a pleasure, as always. And we will see you all next week.